The Chosen Season 3 Episode 2 has turned out to be one of my favorite episodes of all time.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they're so good.
Today, let's talk about the 2x2 and how Jesus sends them out. This is a super long and intricate scene, and there's so much to talk about. So let's do a deep dive on this scene in particular and talk about every little hidden detail. I guarantee you there's gonna be something in today's video that you didn't catch on your first watch. So let's jump right in. The first thing that they talk about is Tent City or Tent Village that is right outside of Capernaum. Remember, we heard the Romans talk about this in this episode as well, as they're going to encapsulate this city and basically collect taxes from them. Now, Tent City is doing a couple of good things and a couple of bad things for Jesus' ministry. As a lot of people are recognizing, Rome is seeing this as a threat of some sorts, and also there's other people that are being interested in this whole gathering of people, including the zealots who are after Simon. The worry is that Rome and these other groups are going to see that Jesus is maybe building an army.
It would appear as if we were building an army, teacher.
And obviously that's not the case, but it could be a fear of theirs for sure. All of these people are just representative of people that Jesus wants to reach all over the place. They come from different areas and different cultures, and Jesus wants to reach all of this Jewish community. And the truth is, Jesus in his bodily form can't be in all of these places at once.
It is not sustainable for me to do all the preaching, all the healing, and ministering.
This is the reason that after Jesus dies and is resurrected, he sends his Spirit, because the Spirit can be with all of us. And so this is a really big deal, even for this point when Jesus is still on earth. He can't be in all these places, so he's going to use his apostles to go and do that. And this isn't the only time that it happens, right? This is not the only 2x2 moment. Just a few chapters later in most of the Gospels, there's actually another event in which Jesus sends 70 or 72, depending on the manuscript, out to do the same exact thing. 2x2, go heal and cast out demons and all this stuff. So there's a lot more people that are in the ministry at this point, which is the entire purpose of the ministry. He's sending out the 12 here so that they can grow the kingdom, so that they can grow the ministry and spread the gospel. Then right after this, Jesus takes a moment to appoint them as apostles.
And I have chosen you 12 as my apostles.
This is a big deal. Now, obviously, today, the word apostle holds so much value and weight to us, especially in the Christian world. But to them, apostle really meant a messenger or a missionary, if you wanted to say it that way.
An apostle is the same as a messenger, one who...
I know what it means, Matthew. That's why I'm asking.
And so when they heard apostle, they didn't hear this holy person that was up above everything, right? They just heard a messenger or a missionary, someone who is going to be sent out. This truly is what these apostles are meant to do. They're meant to go and spread the gospel. They're meant to grow the kingdom, grow the ministry, and to continue what Jesus is doing here on earth. Remember, Jesus eventually has 5,000 to 15,000 people following him. This is nuts. It's so many people that want to hear his words and to hear what he has to say, and sometimes to eat food from him. There's a lot of different stuff that happens here later on in scriptures that happens because they're spreading the word to everywhere. And so the growth of the ministry is really beginning now. Now, as the conversation continues, we actually hear Jesus say specifically that they are sent out to the Jews, not the Gentiles at this time, specifically to the lost sheep of Israel. And this is actually directly from scripture. Now, we get the 2x2 in 3 out of the 4 gospels, and that would be Mark 6, Luke 9, and then Matthew 10 is by far the most descriptive version of this 2x2. It's basically the entire chapter.
I'm sending you out in every direction, 2 by 2, specifically to our people only.
Every direction, Rabbi?
Yes, but not to the Gentiles. Not yet. That will come in time. But to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
In Matthew 10 is where we get this very clear command not to go anywhere near the Gentiles, but to very specifically go to the lost sheep of Israel. It's really interesting to see that, but of course we know, even in the New Testament, first to the Jew, then to the Greek. But this is where things get to be a little bit overwhelming for the apostles, as Jesus describes exactly what this mission is for. Not only are they to proclaim the kingdom of heaven, not only are they to build the ministry, but they're also going to be healing the sick and casting out demons. Now, the apostles' reactions to this weren't recorded in the books themselves, But it seems like there must have been some sort of reaction like this, especially because in Matthew 10, there's an entire section that talks about fear and how not to have fear during this journey. Now, I love in The Chosen where Jesus mentions healing the lame, we immediately see James check out from the rest of the conversation. He is completely silent and focused on that. And of course, that brings us to the conversation that him and Jesus have later on in the next scene. Now, John, out of fear, begins to ask, why would you need us for this? We're barely trained as students. Like, we've barely been with you for any time at all. Why would you need us for this? But then Simon the Zealot replies to him with something that Jesus told him in season 2, episode 5, which is, I don't need you, I want you.
With all due respect, Rabbi, we've only just begun as students. We're not nearly qualified enough. Why would you need us for this work?
He doesn't need us. He wants us.
Thank you, C. Very good.
Which is really an amazing callback to that line, showing that Simon the Zealot is learning these things as well. And then Jesus begins to go through all the instructions for them as they're going to where they're going to go. He says, don't bring a second tunic. He says, don't bring any food or supplies. Basically, trust on God completely with everything that you have. In fact, you won't even have a place to stay. You're going to be asking people to basically house you and to feed you and to take care of you. You're going to be relying on the goodness and the kindness of others. Jesus specifically says, do not bring a second tunic. And then Matthew points out that even the wandering cynic philosophers have a second tunic or a change of clothes. But Jesus says, yes, and they also have a beggar's bag for people to put coins into. You will not do that either. You need to separate yourself from these wandering philosophers. So who are these wandering philosophers? During this time that Rome ruled the area in the Mediterranean and the surrounding area, basically there was wandering philosophers that would go from city to city without a destination and without a proper path. They wouldn't travel just from A to B, but they would go all over the place. And of course, they didn't bring much with them as well since they were traveling all the time. But they did bring these certain things that we talked about in this scene here. Now, these philosophers were obviously not Jewish or anybody that wanted to follow Jesus at this time. And so obviously Jesus wants to distinguish his followers from that as well. While this isn't necessarily a direct scriptural thing, it definitely could be tied to it because all of these things existed at the same time with Jesus and his disciples. Real quick before we continue with the 2x2 scene, I just wanted to let you know that we are going to Israel in 2023. Listen, I am so excited about the videos that we're going to make and the different things that we're going to have happen. We're going to have Patreon exclusive videos. We're going to have videos for you guys. We're going to do a whole series from Israel. It's going to be absolutely amazing. But you actually have a chance to go with us on the next trip. I'm going to be inviting some more YouTube hosts. Obviously, I'm going to be on the trip, and it's going to be an amazing, amazing time. That's going to be in January of 2024, so we need to get that trip filled out. If you want to be a part of that, if you've never been to the Holy Land, or if you want to go again, then make sure you click that link in the description down below and check out our itinerary for our 2024 trip. In fact, we're actually doing an extension to Jordan as well, to go to places like Petra. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Anyway, I hope to see you guys there, and click that link in the description down below to sign up. Now let's get back to the 2x2. Now I love a lot of the scripture that they added into this scene. Primarily, a lot of it is from Matthew 10 because that's the most descriptive version of the 2x2 that we have. But there are some really cool moments, including you received without pay, now give without pay. And he's kind of telling them, like, just give freely, walk into these places and help them with everything that you can. Then he goes on to say that if the town doesn't accept you, then go ahead and dust off your feet, walk away, and don't waste your time. Now, in The Chosen, this seems like almost a mundane thing that Jesus is like, just walk away, let them kind of do what they're going to do.
Whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it and stay there until you depart. And if anyone should not receive you or listen to your words, shake the dust off your feet as you leave that house or town. Do not waste your time.
But in Matthew 10, it's actually very, very descriptive and very, very dangerous for this town. Matthew 10 verse 15 says this: "Truly I say to you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than that town." So a very hard punishment for these towns that do not accept the apostles. As we go on in this scene, we see that Jesus is telling them that the reason why he's sending them out 2 by 2 is so that they can be proof to his ministry. And the proof will be from them healing, casting out demons, and showing them the truth of the gospel. And that happens in 2 by 2. What if someone random just came up to you and started screaming about something really crazy, right? You wouldn't believe them. But what if two people came up to you and they start discussing about something that they truly believe? You're way more inclined to believe those two people, right? And we even see a precedent for this in the law back in the Old Testament. If we go to Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15, it shows us exactly why this is important. A single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime or any wrong in connection with any offense that he has committed. Only on the evidence of two witnesses or of three witnesses shall a charge be established. Now, while two witnesses is necessary for a crime, of course, Jesus would need two or more witnesses to show the proof of him being who he says that he is, that he's the Messiah, that he's here to save them. And then later on in the New Testament, this obviously becomes a very common practice, with Paul almost always having a companion and others we see at the same time traveling together and doing these things together. But as Jesus begins to lay out exactly what this mission looks like, well, the disciples get really human. They all begin to doubt and to fear. And then Andrew even says, yeah, what if it goes really bad like it did with John? But then we come to some scripture from Matthew chapter 10, verse 28.
Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul.
Now, I know that they couldn't fit all of Matthew chapter 10 into this little scene because it would be like a 50-minute scene, but it would have been amazing to see a little bit more of the context here. Now, in Matthew chapter 10, we get this whole entire section that's entitled, Have No Fear. And the whole idea of this is to have no fear when it comes to man or someone that can kill your earthly body. But there's a huge emphasis in this section that we should fear God, that we should understand and respect exactly who he is and know how much power he has. Because obviously he is the creator of all things and the one who controls absolutely everything. And then if we continue in Matthew 10, right after this section on fear, he goes straight into understanding exactly what the mission of Jesus is, which is not peace, but a sword. This small passage explains exactly why Jesus came, that he didn't come to bring peace, that he came to divide households. He came to divide people because those that choose him are going to be set apart. Those that choose him are going to be different. Those that choose him are going to be holy, and those that pick up their cross and walk with him daily are worthy of him, but those that don't are not. As this scene continues, it gets more and more heavy for the apostles. Everything is becoming super real for them at this point, even to the point of Jesus saying, you will know what it actually means to give up your life.
You will follow in my footsteps, and you will know what it actually means to give up your life.
So, you're saying we could die?
We come back to practicality for the show for a second, where Thomas asks about what's exactly going on with the 2x2. And Jesus says that the women will stay here, which Thomas kind of slumps at. He's kind of sad that he's not going to be with Rhema for the moment. But we see that the women are going to stay in Capernaum. They're going to help Zebedee with an olive oil business and obviously help to provide for the ministry. But then everyone in the room begins asking questions and kind of bickering with each other. Doubts are starting to surface. But I love what Thaddeus says here, actually.
I still can't understand this. You want us to go out there. No defenses. No food. No shelter. Just go out into strange
He
lands.
said not to be afraid.
Fear is not a thing you just stop, Andrew.
I'm going with Z then.
I may be the most at risk of all of us.
Great.
Whatever happened to trust?
Everybody calm down.
Obviously, Thaddeus being one of the people who trust Jesus absolutely the most. He's meek, which means strength under control. He's a quiet guy, but he's obviously one of the strongest followers of Jesus right now. Then as Simon quiets everybody up, he allows Judas to have the first question to Jesus. Now, this is where we see a little bit more of Judas not being able to fully trust Jesus. He's only known Jesus for a couple of days, and obviously he's going to be the weakest one here, not understanding exactly what's going on yet. But he offers a solution to their problems by saying that he has some plans for infrastructure that they could, not have to worry about trusting these other people or, doing these certain things. They could just have money and have business plans to make everything work out. But obviously that's not the point of this mission. Jesus isn't worried about them having money or food or anything. He wants them to trust that God will provide for them. But this moment with Judas gives us way more insight into who he is and how he's not able to trust quite yet. But then Simon suggests that they actually appoint someone to take care of the funds that they do have or the resources that they do have. And of course, Philip nominates Matthew because he was a tax collector. He's dealt with a lot of money. He's very organized, and they think that they can trust him at this point. And surprisingly to everybody, Simon actually agrees with him. But then Matthew declines. Remember, this is a struggle for him. As he mentioned in his scene with his father, he struggles with that idea of affluence and wanting more and more. It is something that is sinful for him and something that he really, really struggles with. So he doesn't want to be a part of it anymore. So he just declines. Now, this is where we get a moment where most of us were waiting for, and that is Judas taking on the mantle of the group's treasurer, the money handler. And of course, we know that eventually he's going to begin stealing from that money pot. And that leads to more and more of his downfall. One thing that I caught in the scene is I wonder if this musical theme that they use for Judas here is going to be his theme as he goes through this journey. Whenever he does something that leads towards the betrayal, will they use this specific musical annotation?
I nominate Judas. His experience would suit us better.
I accept. Anything to help.
Done. All right.
Then we get to the official appointment of the 2x2. Jesus goes through and separates them 2x2 and then tells them exactly where they're going. So here are the groups and locations of each of the 2x2. First, we get Simon and Judas. They're going to go north to Caesarea Philippi. Then we have Andrew and Philip, who are going east to Neve. Then we have Nathanael and Thaddeus, who are going south to Perea. Then John and Thomas, who are going southwest to Joppa. Then Big James and Little James, who are going west to the plains of Sharon. And finally, we get Matthew and Simon the Zealot, who are going all the way down to Jericho. Now, of course, we get a few reactionary moments within the appointment of the 2x2 that I think are actually really interesting. First, we have Simon and Eden. They've just talked about their family planning and how they want Eden to get pregnant and start this family, but now that plan is kind of being disrupted because they don't know how long Simon is going to be gone on this 2x2 journey. You can see later that Eden is actually pretty upset by this, but Simon is ready to do whatever needs to be done for the mission. And then, of course, we get the disciples of John the Baptist together. I'm sure they're really excited because they're probably on the same page with a lot of these things. They both have followed John and been a part of his ministries, so they know exactly how to do these sort of things together. Now, when he appoints John and Thomas, we've seen since episode 1 of season 3 that John and Thomas are really starting to create a bond together. And even that Big James is a little bit jealous. So John looks over at Thomas, excited that they're paired together, but then Big James actually looks at John and is kind of jealous a bit. He's kind of upset by this pairing. I think this is going to be an ongoing thing within the season where Big James is kind of dealing with some jealousy between his brother. And then the last big reaction that we get is actually from Simon the Zealot and Matthew. Now, of course, this is a big deal, Matthew being a tax collector and Simon being a zealot. If we remember back to season 2, episode 5, Simon actually says this.
If you could kill me, do it.
Are you a Roman?
No.
A tax collector?
Please.
Remember, he says to the demoniac, are you a Roman? Are you a tax collector? Because the demoniac is asking, begging for him to kill him. And as a zealot, he basically has free reign to kill any Roman that he wants and any tax collector that he wants. So this is obviously a mismatch in the minds of all of the apostles. This is going to be dangerous for Matthew. And I love Matthew's reaction here as well. He's basically trying to back away from the situation as hard as he can.
Z, everyone is reacting to the notion of you traveling with a tax collector.
What?
We have not told you about Matthew's former occupation.
But this obviously gives Jesus a great moment to reteach something that he's been teaching them all along, which is that they're not what they were. Simon is as much a zealot as Matthew is a tax collector. They're no longer beholden to the things that they did in their past. It's just like when someone becomes a Christian and they used to be an addict. They're no longer a part of that. While there may be consequences that follow them because of it, they're no longer beholden to what they used to be. I did a ton of research for this video, so it would mean a ton to me if you could like and subscribe and even share with a friend if you would like to. If you want to go above and beyond, you can sign up for our Patreon. We have a $5, $10, and $25 tier that you guys could join and really help support our ministry every single month. Anyway, thank you guys so much. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.